Committee meeting, April 11th, 2023, with Lisa Dorsey and Bernie Flynn. First is any comments, suggestions, or petitions by residents in attendance.
Darrell Cooks, 506 South Walnut Street. On Tuesday, March 21st, approximately 10:15 p.m., I called 2700 for a Volvo XC60 New Jersey registration blocking my garage. When the Westchester police officer got there, he informed me that the policy just changed and no parking tickets would be issued on private property. I'm interested in getting a copy of the private parking policy. Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Ann Carroll, 506 South Franklin Street. I would like to put it on your radar or put it as needs to be addressed. The fact that our permit parking in the 500 block of South Franklin Street and elsewhere is only Monday through Friday. Times have changed. Our students no longer go home. As a matter of fact, what they do in general is bring people in on the weekends, and I have reported this to parking office, and they're working on it, but they can't do anything on the weekends because we're Monday through Friday parking. The report several years ago and recommendations were that we kind of make things uniform. Well, I would suggest that I need parking 7 days a week. I am parked out on weekends when there are student events or just student parties, which April will bring. So that needs to please get addressed. I would also like to see us change the number of permits. This was also brought up years ago, that there be a maximum number of permits and guest passes. I know that we're limited to guest passes, but we have 4 cars in a house. That means 6 cars park. We have 25 spaces on my street, and you do the math for 14 houses, those numbers don't work. So, and we have no availability of off-street parking because Goose Creek runs behind. So thank you. It's on your radar. Ms. Reiner and I hopefully will get a chance to talk. I've been trying for a couple months, but she's been very busy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the discussion items. The first is the garage monthly report.
Good evening. Forrest Freeman with Impark Reef. Numbers are trending okay. Versus budget, we actually seem to have projected our budget a little bit. So we're trending a little bit down from that. We anticipate picking this up as the year goes on. Versus last year, we're still doing well. We've dropped off in monthly parking a little bit. So we're circling up, and we'll be discussing with Ramsey some things that we can try to do to spur that a little bit more to build. Versus 2019, we're about 6% up year to date for same month. So it's still trending well versus 2019, trending well versus last year. We're just a little bit behind on the budget side, which we anticipate continuing to move on. At the garage, Chestnut Street, we've had some issues with the back elevator, mainly with the storms that came in. I think it went down twice. Something that we've had Otis out to take a look at. So we're keeping an eye on it. Obviously, we don't want anybody to get stuck in there. We've had issues in the past with the back elevator, so it's something that again we're keeping a close eye on. The front elevators are fine. They were completely modified a couple of years ago, so they're good to go. No issues there, but just something of note. And again, so things are moving along. We have some canceled parkers. Graph wise, again. March, from a revenue per day was pretty much year over year, very similar. We're anticipating again that's going to start picking up as summer months, warmer weather, everything starts to come in. Tickets issue tells the same story, and then as we go to year over year revenue, our little lines are still above last year, and I do need to change this graph so that it actually is a little bit more representative, so we don't have to sit here and track back all the ways. But again, we're doing better than we were, and we continue to push and keep trying to make adjustments to keep that squiggly line going up. That's what I have.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you. Have a good night.
And director's report?
Hello. I actually did one. Um, Sorry, it was a little last minute and I promise it will get better and better, but
That's a really nice cover.
Canva, my favorite tool. Oh, and that is Westchester Views photo. Should get street cred for that. First, I would like to just commend one of our clerks up front, Tina Arison, celebrated her 35th anniversary working for the borough of Westchester. So thanks to her. She's got the patience of a saint, so that's how she's lasted that long. We do have two new hires, David Santo and Walt DeWitt. They've been working through training, so we're getting them onboarded. We're continuing the 4G upgrades. I know there was some concern, I think Mr. Flynn brought to our attention about the street sweeping down at the university because of the food trucks parking. So I reached out to Julie Dietrich and they are going to work on coordinating a space during breaks so that when the students aren't in session, the trucks can park on campus so that we can at least clean during that time. A lot of the food truck owners have said it's cheaper for them to pay the ticket for parking there than it is to move the truck. So baby steps. I was appreciative that they were willing to work with us. The private property enforcement, I know we had discussed that here, and I spoke with the chief. I think there was some misinformation shared with the police department. They had a meeting internally. Parking services will no longer be enforcing on private property. Police will still be enforcing private property issues. They're more capable of handling stressful situations. So apologies to Mr. Cook. We did discuss that. And I think that officer was just misinformed. So we won't be modifying the ordinance. It's just a procedural issue. In the budget for the parking department this year, we have a capital improvement for upgrades to the entry ticketing system at the garages. We're working, I think previously Reef Park had been getting quotes and managing it. We're going to take over the project and do some demos internally, and we'll come back to council for approval on the system and upgrades in the future. I just wanted to plant that seed. The Justice Center enforcement. We've pulled all of, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Sean. It is in our ordinance. The Justice Center kiosks are in our ordinance. So I looked through the land development files. I cannot find the final land development agreement, but I would bet money on it that it stipulates what the MOU is that's existing. So I think that enforcement there, I'm more comfortable with it now because it is in our ordinance. So if anybody happens to have that land development, I did reach out to the county to see if they had it. I've been looking, I'm pretty good at digging through stuff, but I have not been able to find the original. I don't know. Mr. Cook might actually know. But in the meantime, we'll continue to enforce. I'll work with the county on that, and we will get the proceeds of all of the tickets. We will also manage the disputes from here on out so that they can't dismiss tickets that we've written. Does that seem like a good plan?
Like a
A
thing, an end,
Band-Aid?
That's a thing.
Okay. I am working on updating the Chapter 104 ordinance and Chapter 77. I don't know if anybody has read the residential permitting ordinance lately, but it is so wordy and confusing. So we're going to streamline that. I have it somewhere. I drew out a map of just the different times of enforcement. They skip blocks. So I'll have a better plan. And in that situation, we can take some comments from Ms. Carroll. I agree with her. So I appreciate the input, and, I want to streamline it. I'm also working with the girls in the front office on the permitting process itself, to see if, we can just maybe make a pamphlet or something that makes it more obvious how to go through the process. It seems very annoying for everyone involved. So that's my goal. Revenue wise, and I apologize that I don't have last year's, but I will continue to build on this. So, ticket revenue this in March was 85,910. Meter revenue was 179,862.35. We've increased the postings since we've started charging for those. We've been making around $800 to $900 a month on those. So that's a nice little bonus for the work put in. And I've been working, finance has been awesome. We've been working together. So now all meter collections are in real-time reporting. So they come in, they get packaged, they go out. There's no, we should be able to read the statements and everything should gel. So pretty nice controls and policies in place there. And yeah, the revenue, I would say is probably a little lower in March just because of we had 3 officers leave and 2 on board. That's my report.
That was a lovely report.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
See lots of progress, so thank you for that.
Yeah,
Do you have questions?
good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to commercial parking in the borough of Westchester.
So I did redline a copy of it's 10439 is oversized vehicles. And I included, and I'll give you a draft of this. I had 2 questions that I needed from you, but I just would include, it says no person shall park or leave it standing any oversized vehicle or unattached trailer upon any public street, highway, right of way. I've included the words borough-owned / regulated parking lot or alley within the borough of Westchester unless that person has requested and received prior approval from the borough parking department. So that would be one modification. I know there was a discussion about overnight parking of residential vehicles at Hoops Park. I asked police and parks what their input was. Police said they would prefer no one park there at night. Keith agreed. But I do also understand, if you're at your kid's softball game and you guys decide you want to go out to dinner together, do we want to be ticketing those cars? So I wanted to hear first your opinion on, do you want it in totality about parking overnight or just commercial vehicles?
Yeah, I thought when we talked about this last, it applied to commercial vehicles. And when we were talking about Hoops, I know that they are residences that are parking in Hoops Park that live right across the street. I personally don't have a problem with that. I mean, I see the same car every day.
Okay.
I'm not sure why I'd like to understand the police preference for it not to be there. But I don't have a problem with residences parking in our parks.
Okay.
I believe the mayor was talking about residents using that lot, and that was definitely didn't seem problematic to anyone around. I do understand where the police are coming, I think, because around Everhart, I know there's some vehicles where people are living in the vehicles and are there 24/7, and it's disturbing to the community. So that's where that line gets a little shaky. I don't know how we regulate that.
But Everhart is a public street, right?
Yes, I'm just
Hoops
saying
is a parking lot, right?
Yeah.
the right to ask them not to be there
Right.
if they are doing that, but I don't believe that they are at this point. And the scenario of you walk into town, you have a couple drinks and you'd like to walk home or get an Uber, like we want people to be comfortable to do things like that. I just think we do need to be cautious, and the police input needs to be taken into consideration.
Sure. And like I said, we'll not that I want to keep redoing ordinances and paying a lawyer for hearings, but we can test it out, make this modification first. And then if the residential parking becomes a problem later, we can always add it in. Everybody comfortable with commercial for now?
Yes.
Okay. Second question, the amount of the fine I would like to do per vehicle per day. I looked around, most places were between $75 and $55. And I wanted to see if you were comfortable with a $75 fine for commercial vehicles. They would get a $10 discount within the 14 days. So it would be 65 if they paid within, but we would ticket, you would be able to ticket each vehicle every day. We wanted something that would be a little bit of a pain for large companies who have a lot of money to throw at these projects. Does that sound high enough?
Yes, I'm comfortable with that. Can we just back up for
Yeah.
a minute? Can you read where these vehicles are? Where
Where
are they parking, where they're going to get?
in any borough-owned or regulated parking lot that does not have prior approval from the parking department, which,
So just lots.
yeah. Well, also you can't park in the public street, highway, right-of-way, or alley. That already exists for oversized vehicles.
I was in, if they're parked in a parking spot on a public street,
Mhm.
is that, we're saying that it's not allowed, and that was never allowed?
Right.
It may have, there was a lawn care people were parking on a street near Hoops Park, I
Mhm.
believe. Yeah, uh-huh. Are they allowed to park there?
Mhm.
Were they moved? Okay, I remember being involved.
I hope so.
Okay, it was commercial vehicles that were being parked in on the street.
Mhm.
And yeah, this is Hector, and we were working through how to deal with this, but he never said it wasn't allowed.
It was, and it was, they were moved.
Okay.
They thought they could move like from one block and maybe 3 blocks down.
Oh, there
It was
were
on-
hours involved. If
They were parking overnight
they were parking
on
overnight.
Marshall Street.
So is this different? Is this new? I'm sorry. Is this wording new? Because there definitely was some loophole that they were getting around. In the end, there was some like agreement and they worked it out, but there was a certain number of hours that
That they
if
were allowed.
moved the vehicle or if they moved it to another block, they could just continue parking it.
It might have been the size of the truck that they were getting away with it. Like a commercial vehicle, we can define by definition, and I had it. There was a weight limit involved, and so I don't know if because it was a landscaping truck, maybe it didn't fall under oversized or commercial vehicle.
I believe it was a trailer.
If it's an unattached trailer, that's definitely not allowed right now. Do you know? Do either of you know? I also, which I apologize, I don't have it with me, but I did create a commercial vehicle definition as well that I stole from another borough.
I have a landscaper 2 doors down and he has a garage and he's very, he parks in the alley and he might load up, but he's quick to move it if you need him to move it.
Mhm.
That's fine. But if you're parking on a street where people are trying to park their
Right.
passenger vehicles, that's not really fine. And
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we do have clean lines as to what's allowed and what's not. So
I can clarify on the oversized vehicle. We can comment on the definition of that. And do you want?
Oversized is, if you don't mind me interrupting,
Yeah.
is gross vehicle weight of 10,000 pounds or more.
Okay. That's oversized. And then commercial was, I think, 20,000, but I mean, it's already 10, so.
with the trailer, do the trailers,
It can't be unattached. I know that's illegal as of now.
but if they're doing work at my property and they're parked in front of my house,
Mhm.
that's allowed.
if they're attached to a truck, they can do that, but they can't drop a trailer and leave it without authorization. Like there was a guy working around here. We did post and let him stay for a week because he was working at the house across the street. There was nowhere to park and he had equipment in there, but I know there's a lot of,
They can request permission
Mhm.
and,
and pay for it.
thank you.
Good. Okay, so $75 with a $10 discount. And I will confirm on the definition and we're good with residential. Great, thank you.
Move on to the lifting policy.
My first question before we get into this is, do you want a lifting policy? Do you want to allow that for residents?
I think it is difficult. I don't think if we're talking about Franklin Street,
Right,
they could lift it every weekend.
right,
That's unacceptable,
right,
even though it currently is, but moving forward.
right,
Lifting meaning lifting the permit requirement?
right, for specific occasions. And I will say, I did call Phoenixville, who is comparable to us, and Lancaster, and I asked what their system was, and they said they don't offer it. They have parking lots. That's what they tell their residents. The residential permitting was put in place to protect the residents and to give them the ability to park. And, they understand it's a pain, but. So that was my first question, because that's an easy fix if you say no.
I think, like what Miss Carroll brought up, there's things that worked 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and they don't necessarily work today.
Yeah, and I'm just a fan of consistency
Mhm.
and moving the whole policy consistently.
Mhm.
So I don't see a need to have it in one area and not another. We just don't need it.
Okay.
I feel like Bill Scott, the devil's advocate. If I have a death in the family and I live on Price Street, and I have everybody coming back for the meal after the funeral, I would like to be able to call you and say, look, from 12 to 3, there's going to be 30 cars, 20 cars, 5 cars on the block. And I would be able to use it. Then the other thing is, not always is there a parking lot around. Down in Mr. Picaro's area, there really isn't a parking lot if you live on Sharpless Street all the way down by Brandywine or Bradford Avenue. And I have a Bible study. And it's my Bible study month. I should be able to call and say, look, we're going to have 5 people here, 5 cars. And, it happens very infrequently, like every 5 months.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there has to be a way to accommodate some of the residents in that aspect of it.
Mhm.
So it's a blanket no.
Mhm.
I don't think it's a great idea. If I want to have a poker night and have 8 of my senior citizens over, and there's 12 of us, I do it once a year. So.
Uber.
I don't even have a find it.
Mr. Flynn, just bear with me. My son goes to college, he's not there yet, but let's pretend. And he wants to move out of my house because he's a grown-up now. And he's gonna move to Miss Carroll's block. Uh-huh. And he knows how the borough works. Most of them don't. He knows how the borough works. He's lived in the borough. He has a PA license on his car. He calls the borough every Friday night after we put in place permit parking. So his friends, and he's an awesome, super popular kid. And he knows how to get everybody to his house. And everybody drives there and they come from New Jersey and they come from everywhere because his cousins are in New Jersey. How do we accommodate that and the Bible study?
That's a $64,000 question. And I hope you got a key in your liquor cabinet.
Maybe there are exceptions for extenuating circumstances, a death in the family, right? I'm not, I don't think you should be able to ask it every Friday night because you want to hold a poker night or even a Bible study. There are extenuating circumstances that maybe, it's granted once a year per resident. But even then, knowing Bernie, he would go to his neighbor and say, I did it last Friday. I need you to do it this Friday.
There is
That's
an,
just- there's- You know what? It's getting scary that Miss Dorsey's understanding my corner. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a catch-22.
I
You
think
know.
about it all night long.
Yeah, yeah.
I still stand by no lifting.
Well, I don't think, God forbid, that anybody dies more than once a year in somebody's house. So that would be an exception. The Bible study, like once a year. Maybe if we give the residents a once a year, a maximum,
Okay.
10 cars, 5 cars, 3 cars, whatever it is. But
can I interject one thing? I'm sorry, miss. Can I interject one thing? You're talking about policy and then you have to administer a policy. So we already have a process in place to evaluate appeals. So should any of the sympathetic things happen and someone gets a ticket and they want to appeal it, we'll review it and the appeal will be on the ticket and we can waive the ticket.
It supports no lifting.
This gets us out in front of the conversations that are going to spawn from a lifting policy where you've now appointed the parking service clerks, the jury and judge on everyone's explanation as to why they need you not to come down and enforce.
Yeah. And again, I understand the differences in geographical setup, but when you compare South Franklin to Price Street, it's impossible to do. I will say that, the clerks and Sean and the officers, this is a conversation that we are having at staff meetings. And I do think with the software that we have and, once we maybe streamline the permitting to a more easily enforceable situation, there might be an opportunity for temporary passes or something like that in the future. But I think without upsetting anyone that has requested a lifting and understanding the need for it, the goal here for the parking department and this ordinance is to protect the residents. And I think that that's like our first duty. So,
I'm gonna say I support no lifting, but please, moving forward, try hard to figure out a way where people can either give you license plate numbers
Yeah.
for the hour or two or whatever it is,
Mhm.
in an easier way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that three people agreeing? 2-1?
2-1.
Okay. And I have a feeling we'll hear from people again that might be able to state a case. And I'm also open to people coming to parking committee and requesting it in maybe an extenuating circumstance until we have a better plan in place. But then, we can deny based on spatial decisions rather than if it's a Bible study or a poets society or whatever. Okay. Thank you.
All right, notification process for the ordinance 202211 Adams Street.
I had seen an email, which I will respond to tomorrow, but I know that the ordinance was written for no parking on South Adams Street from minor 1,115 feet from there, from the intersection at East Neal Street for a distance of approximately 1,115 feet. So I did speak with Public Works, and my plan is ready to go, depending on what timeline you all would like to set. But my suggestion would be that Public Works puts the signs in the next month or so. We created a warning ticket violation so that we can track license plates, so that we can prove that we have notified every vehicle when they say they didn't know. We can run this for as long as Parking and Council determines, and we would also include a little courtesy reminder that this area will be no parking, and we will officially ticket on whatever day you all recommend. So that would be my suggestion for procedure. So,
I'm comfortable with that.
yeah. Yeah.
Ann Carroll, 506 South Franklin Street, also Vice Chair of Case Civic Action Southeast. When this ordinance was done, I wondered where people thought the 50 cars, because I've counted them, are going to go. Where will these wind up? It's not like you're saying, oh, we've made a corner shorter and it's one car. So I know Sue Bain had some conversations about this. Part of the concern in the neighborhood is that they're going to come to us. And the other concern is that if people are not warned in advance of getting an apartment, for example, next to the railroad tracks, where that's convenient parking if they're out of parking on their lot, but they don't live there yet, they're going to live there next year, but their buddy told them that you can do that, they're not going to get one of these pink notices. So Sue's suggestion was that the landlords and management of the nearby places, I mean, we're talking big places, we're talking that apartment complex, we're talking all of Ramsgate, to say nothing of the myriad houses that might have these issues. So, and if those 50 cars come to us on Neal Street, has no parking in that block that leads up to the railroad track, none on either side. There's a little tiny block of Adams Street, which I'm concerned, and I told Mr. Metrick that this ordinance is not clear which Adams Street it is. The only thing that makes it clear is the 1,115 feet, because the other Adams Street that intersects with Neal Street probably doesn't have 1,000 feet. But that has no extra parking either. South Franklin Street is next. We have none. I will probably not be able to park when I get home. So what was the thought process of where the cars were going to go?
All the conversation correctly. And I also went down to, there were a number of box trucks on that. The day I was there, it might have been more, but I think we wanted them generally removed, right? We just had the whole conversation around commercial vehicles. I don't know if that qualifies as a commercial or, and the conversation was around a number of those cars being college students, to your point, Ms. Carroll, and having to find other parking in the borough.
I remember being very uncomfortable about asking there to be no parking there. But after looking at the plans, the safety was too much of an issue. It was a serious problem. So yes, we need to make some adjustments to the surrounding area like you have asked. We need to move forward on some of these things because it's not just that block. It's a much larger issue, and we need to ask for things to keep moving forward. And I think that's what this is all about. And I greatly appreciate you coming out here. And I greatly appreciate Sue Bain's email. We need to keep these things moving, and we need to make sure that we are communicating as clearly with the community as possible and making the adjustments that need to be made.
Daryl, I'm gonna just, I know Daryl. One thing I think that the borough does need to keep in mind, and thank you for saying that, and please God, we do. We will lose permanent residents in these affected areas if they cannot park. And your permanent residents are really your tax base, even though we are fewer and fewer and fewer. I've been there for 42 years, and it's hard. And so please remember that otherwise you've ceded the entire Southeast and part of the Southwest to not tax base friendly folk.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Daryl Cook, 506 South Walnut Street. Has anybody seen the final plans for the 611 East Field Street?
I have not.
Okay, the understanding I had for the request for the removal was so that the tractor trailers could enter the second warehouse for left-hand parking, which was going to be difficult. So I would suggest that it not be enforced until after a final plan is seen.
I mean, why does it need to, if it's is it a safety concern as of right now?
No, because the,
Just for this plan?
Cars have been parking there for more than 42 years, I'm thinking. The request to have the removal of parking on South Adams Street was so the tractor trailers could enter and park left-handed at the second warehouse. The original plan with one warehouse was all trucks would enter off of Balmer Street. The reason the request was made was so the trucks could enter to park at the second warehouse. I don't see a second warehouse. I haven't seen a final plan yet. I don't think it should be enforced until construction.
Thank
Me-
you. I missed that meeting. Thank you.
Zoning Hearing Board hat now on head, Ann Carroll. My understanding is that there are two warehouses. My understanding is from the Zoning Hearing Board testimony was that all trucks are to enter off Balmer Street, but some will leave out from the second warehouse, the northern warehouse. They may have to leave. And then there was some comment made at Zoning Hearing Board, and if anybody missed the turn on Balmer, they might have to adjust onto Adams. But that would not be a primary location for turning into either of those warehouses. It would be for exiting from both the regular person parking as well as maybe trucks coming from that northern warehouse, if I recall that testimony correctly. But I would agree to a certain extent with Daryl in terms of there is no need to cut that parking now, but I would recommend that when in advance of construction. So if they're going to start construction, it should be in advance of that, so you're not playing the haul away game on short notice. But if they're not planning to build, maybe Mr. Metric knows when they're planning to build. But if they're not going to build next year, I mean, the plan has 5 years. It can sit fallow for 5 years until the economy does whatever the economy does. Not that we want it to do that, but there's no point in taking people's stuff away. At the same time, the other side of the coin is if the building is indeed going to start next year, say, November for some bizarre reason, it would not be a good idea to get the kids used to parking there. So the natural break, if the building is going to be constructed in 23, 24, the natural break would be to do it at the end of this semester, but to notify them before so that the new dive-ins who are signing leases already don't think that that's going to happen.
And that was our thinking, all of that. We were looking at the plans, seeing that if these plans went forward the way it was drawn, it's a safety issue. And the timing of this is bizarre because of the student population, because that's who's there. And this was a guess. We guessed at this timing. And if there is something clear that this is not going to start, then sure, we can hold off. But there's one thing that I've learned very clearly since taking this position, and it is that nothing happens at the speed that anybody wishes it would happen.
No.
So we're trying.
Yeah.
I think is what we're trying to make this work for as many people as it can.
Good
which
luck.
is- Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah, which is
I've
very
been there.
true. But
Yeah, Ms. Vaccaro, at Smart Growth tomorrow, maybe we could ask that question to Mr. Gore. Has he seen any final plans that he's reviewing for that site? I don't know if it's on there or not.
I think it is on, I read it somewhere in preparation for this week's meetings. I think it's on Smart Growth, and it's been delayed for storm management
Okay.
remediation. So I don't know that we have a date.
Why don't I just leave it on the agenda as a hanging agenda item and we can discuss it until you guys are ready to pull on the plan? And I apologize, I wasn't aware of, I did not hear the discussion about the ordinance, so I appreciate the input.
all right, let's move on to 410 South High Street land development parking.
So speaking of nowhere to park, and seeing, I'm aware of a lot of larger land development plans coming in. I spoke with Kevin Gore and I spoke with Sean about excluding future multifamily dwellings from our residential permitting program. My feeling personally is that if land developers are saying, we have 125 units, Saldo and zoning say that you only need so many spots, and that's all people want because they're commuting, then they should put their money where their mouth is and notify people at the time. Speaking of Kristen Camp, she recommended that we try to have this on the land development plan itself, noting that this specific property would be excluded from the permitting area surrounding it. But I think it might be good practice for some of these larger developments because the roads can't sustain more people that want to have 3 cars and live in an apartment with only 1 parking spot. And I think this might be a good preventative measure to consider.
Can I ask because I'm not involved with any of the housing projects going on. What apartment-wise, what are our regulations as far as how many
Or required.
spaces per bedroom?
We got away from that way of calculating space, and now it's a trip generation and parking generation study that the applicant has to provide to us, and that's where we determine the amount of off-street parking spaces that are required. So some uses generate less than 2 parking spaces per dwelling units, depending on where they're located and how dense they are. And some types of uses play nice together, like residential and office, meaning the office workers show up at the same time the residentials are going to their jobs somewhere else. So that those studies that are project specific are part of the land development application process. There's no one answer to your question.
Okay, I've read some of those studies. my constituents are up in arms about this. Personally, I am 100% for this. When I actually talk to them, I think we're in the same place. No, I don't love the plan that they proposed. I don't think it's going to be that ever. I'm a designer. I present things that are awful so that the next design are a little bit better. I hope none of my clients ever see me say that, but it's not exactly true. But I know that thinking and how that development happens. You start out with the worst case scenario and you backpedal until you get something that's workable. I know people are not going to like this, but I am really disgusted by the idea of inviting a number of people to come live in our borough and then not allowing them to park. Cornell University, you can't bring a car until you're a senior, or this back in the day, that was the rule. Which, okay, that made sense. And I know Westchester has its policy, and but people who are living here and then not being allowed to park here, who are we punishing? Are we punishing the builders? Or are we punishing the people who have moved in and are part of our community?
I would say if the land developer is saying this is sustainable because people Uber and no one wants cars, then knowing, I hear what you're saying, and I don't like excluding people. I will say Washington Square apartments and Waverly have been excluded already, but I think we're in a situation where homes have been turned into multifamily dwellings with no like proactive consideration of parking. And now we're going to have, I don't know if it's 125 units, and then the Rubenstein's property is going to be that as well. So I don't know where everyone's going to park if people already can't park. And if they're saying this is what we need, then they should plan around that, because soon Price Street, they're all going to be on Price Street, and then no one will be able to park there.
Count their garage space. All right. If you have a garage, I have a garage, and I have off-street parking. If you're counting that, whether I'm in an apartment building or in a single residence, this would like throw the whole calculation thing off. But would something drastically different work?
So, Ms. Reiner, can I ask, can you explain what the suggestion is? Because I'm not sure I'm following. So the land development, 125 apartments, and if they are including parking on the property, they are excluded, the residents are excluded
Right,
from parking requirements on the street.
right.
And the suggestion is that they should no longer be excluded. If they are required to park on the street, they have to meet the same requirements of any other resident.
I'm saying exclude this building and their tenants from being available to get a residential parking permit to park on the streets. Or,
Currently, we're already excluding 2 apartment buildings.
yes.
And are there any problems in those situations?
Not as far as refusal. I think proactive communication, which is why I'm for the land development plan is approved. I'm sure people are annoyed that they live there and can't get it, but I'm not sure how they market it to their residents to let them know.
I'm concerned so honestly, I'm kind of fine with a place on High Street not having access to parking on Dean and Price. I'm kind of okay with that. But I'm not okay with the 4-unit on Matlack. These are basically homes. nice little homes on the street.
Mhm.
I know it's a multiple thing and it has plenty of parking in the back, but I don't know about excluding them just because they have to have an HOA because of our rule. Where's that line?
Well, I wasn't supposed to attend the planning commission meeting. I was supposed to be playing golf all week, but young Grayson decided to get rushed to the hospital, so I got called home. Grandma didn't want to drive home, so I got a chance to go to the meeting. And parking was, if I remember right, they're going to have spots for 145 cars. But they have 149 available plus 25 bonus spots somewhere on the property. Okay. The builder has, I believe, and I could be wrong with it, I'm in that ballpark, say he's required to have 145 parking spots. They have 149. And somewhere else on the property there, I wasn't sure where they were putting it, was a bonus 25 extra lots
And this is based on their
on their,
traffic study.
on their parking plan. The problem with their parking plan is that they're allowing apartment 1 to have 2 parking spots, but they're stacked, one behind another. So apartment 2 is the same way all across the front. Say maybe 10 apartments have stacked parking, which we don't allow out on the pavement, but it's a private property and they could be inconvenienced all they want inside. So that's how they're getting, they're cramming in their parking to meet the requirement. So their traffic guy, showed us the plan. And like I said, there's a lot of stacked parking inside that's, a bit inconvenience for the people. The question came up was, if you have a 2-bedroom apartment and you have 4 people living in it, what are you going to do with the other 2 cars? Because you only got 2 cars. So if everybody has 2 cars, it's a problem. So that they said they were going to hash that out and bring it back at the next planning commission meeting. But it was around those numbers.
All right. I'm going to settle on, I'm fine with not giving them any permit parking.
How about you two that I'm staring at?
I agree with Sheila. No permit parking out on the streets. They should be able to supply their parking for the people that they have, that they're renting to.
I know that Dean Street in that section is already too tight and we're giving up some of the parking for the accessing these lots and whatever if the plan goes forward anywhere like it is, which I don't think it is, but we'll go from there.
Okay. Lisa?
I agree.
Okay. Thank you.
And then we're going to consider the RFP for parking garage manager.
So I apologize. In getting onboarded, did not realize that the parking garage management contract expires on August 31st. We do need to go out for RFP because it is the responsible thing to do. I believe the original contract was in 2014 for 3 years, and then we've been doing 1-year extensions. That being said, to turn around and get something done by August 31st will be tight. So I wanted to hear from you all about considering an extension, either 1 year or at least till the end of the year, to look at, so that it would give us some time to really consider it.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Are you okay with a
No.
1-year extension with?
I like the job that
Sorry.
you're doing, and, it's he shows up every month and gives us the same graph. I don't think he has 2 graphs.
Yeah.
It's the graphs.
And to be clear, I very much
Different
like
paper.
them. I have no issues with Reef M Park, but I do think it's appropriate to go out for RFP eventually next year. Okay, so extend for 1 year. Okay, thank you.
All right, action items, approve March 2023 Parking Committee minutes. Okay, and then B, waive fees for voter posting. Please do that.
In speaking with Dana, I kind of took care of itself, but when I started here, I started the day before Election Day, and there was a concern that a lot of the polling places didn't request postings for the surrounding area. If council and parking committee are comfortable with it, we can just manage not enforcing within a 2-block radius of parking, polling places, and people are welcome to dispute any tickets if they provide proof they were voting. You know, we want to make sure people are voting. So
Will signs be posted?
I was going to just, we don't have to post signs as long as they're not ticketing in that area, just to save the dollar on posting.
I totally understand where you're coming from. I just know that in my ward,
Is it
I'm
confusing?
very confused about, that
Okay.
they weren't allowed to park here. So, you know, the lame guy who's got 4 blocks.
Okay, then we'll
Stop
post.
that.
We'll post. I want to be, very pro voting. So I'm happy to, we'll just manage it internally. And I was going to reach out to ask them to request it, but I think it's easier if we just do it ourselves. But I wasn't going to charge them.
It'd be easier that since we all attend the polls, they could give us the two tags and save the borough a lot of aggravation and just go up there and tag it ourselves because we go to our polling place anyway. What do you think?
Oh, to post it.
Do you vote by mail?
No.
We
I
can
have enough
take-
things to do.
Yeah, we can take care of it. We'll let Bernie post his.
I'm not retired.
Okay,
Don't
but we will.
Don't be a hater. It's a wonderful feeling.
Thank you.
Okay, and free of charge, everybody's comfortable with that? Okay. Free of charge. Okay.
Is there any other business?
No, I feel-
Hearing none, I'm going to adjourn this meeting.
Thank you.